a crime, loving you, dear, like I do. If it's a crime, then I'm guilty.
Mr. Reyes, Mr. Quislebosh, and Mr. Alvarez are all excused from tonight's meeting. Alternates, Mrs. Kaltenberg and Mr. Crisino, will be voting in their place. First item of business.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
I just wanted to, for the public and just for the rest of the board, to just our seating arrangement tonight and our next couple of meetings, MIS and the council, we're doing the social distancing of 6 feet. And so your seats, we're only able to get 5 seats up at the DS. Unfortunately, tonight we have 6, but at our future meetings too, we would like to do more of a rotating. If we have a full board, we'll have 4 seats down here, 5 up at the DS, and we'll rotate members to have below and down. And that we'll do that until... Next meeting, we'll just rotate, and staff will do that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carter, we'll trust that they put you in a good seat.
Remember, we're all old.
Okay.
Yeah, right. New head. I need a vibrator on my seat.
Thank you.
And a remote.
Next item is approval of the minutes from our March 5th, 2020 commission meeting. Do any of the commissioners or any of those, let's see, commissioners, no, just the commissioners here, have any corrections, comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I believe that our board secretary has done a great job. I'd entertain a motion then for...
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of our regular meeting of March 5th, 2020, as written.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. I think this is pretty clear. I think we can do it with a roll call. I'm sorry, a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? They are approved as submitted by unanimous vote. As far as items on our agenda tonight, we have no quasi-judicial or public hearings. As far as unfinished business, it's been a while since we met, but there is no unfinished business at this point. The next item on our agenda would be public input, and that could be from anyone in the audience here from the public or those on Zoom. And we do have a limit of 5 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone here that has any input on any other item that's not on? Would you please come forward and give us your name and street address, please?
This is getting to be familiar. My name is Graham Cox, 1213 George Street. My question and concern is about the new timetable for the completion of the comprehensive plan and the opportunities for public input into that. And I realize that Lisa may appear on Zoom or will appear on Zoom, but I'm really concerned that we're way behind in getting that done and way behind in getting public input on the various sections of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just make a comment. We are very diligently working on that. I know I've been reading it and we've looked it over, but we also have an accelerated schedule on that as well. Any other person here in the audience to speak in the public input? I see none. Is there anyone?
Mr. Chairman, if I can make a, I don't know if this answers that question, but I don't know if he's received it, but on our in front of us today, we have a revised date and time for the scheduled meetings to determine the comprehensive plan.
And Commission, I know under staff matters, I know Ms. Fraser's going to join us, and she
Okay.
will go over the information that's at your
Okay.
seat tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Yeah.
I had the advance that it was going to be covered later.
Well, I think it goes without saying that was because
Oh, yeah.
of the recent crisis, if you will, everything has been altered, but the meetings are still going to be taking place to develop the comprehensive
Right.
plan.
Is there anyone else on Zoom that has public comment?
Does not appear to be.
I'm sorry, was that there are none on Zoom? Okay, thank you very much. Well, that will conclude then the public input section of our agenda tonight. The next order of business is actually new business. It's an accessory structure review at 520 Hibiscus Avenue. One of the staff going to provide the background on that, Mr. Loring?
Sure. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
The request is for an approval of a 996 square foot detached garage building. The project location is at 502 Hibiscus Avenue, which is lots 6 and 7, block 27, Sebastian Highlands, Unit 1. Staff completed the required findings. We've found most of the conditions that we require for an accessory use to be compliant. The one thing that I did want to draw the board's attention to is under 4D. The proposed accessory structure height is actually 19 foot 4 and 5/16 inches, not 16 as listed on the report. The difference is that we required the applicant to match the slope of their existing home, so that's the difference. There are some additional considerations that we'd like for the board to consider. Number one, based on the submitted plan, there appears to be approximately 118 feet of perimeter area, which includes a concrete pad proposed to the west of the proposed structure. Size and scope of the project would require a total of 40 shrubs to be planted and maintained around the perimeter of the garage. This should be an item for the board to mandate as a condition of approval. A revised plan showing the required landscape should also be submitted to city staff as part of the approval process, with landscaping required to be in place and maintained at the time of final approval. Number two, the proposed garage at minimum needs to match the roof material of the existing home. It appears that the existing home has a dimensional asphalt shingle and the proposed garage has a metal roof. That being said, the applicant has applied for a permit to install a metal roof on the home, and as a condition of approval, the board may wish to mandate that the roof on the home is completed prior to a certificate of completion request for the proposed detached garage, and that both the home and the garage have a matching roof and paint colors at the time of final approval. Number three, as a condition of approval, Existing shed needs to be removed prior to the construction of the new garage so that the total square footage of accessory structures is under the 1,000-foot threshold. Number 4, lot number 6 appears to lie within a floodplain. Survey needs to be updated showing the demarcation line that runs through the lot. The updated survey will need to be submitted to the building department for a floodplain determination prior to the form board inspection for the proposed garage. It should be noted that the proposed garage is 19 foot 4 5/16 inches in height, and the proposed home has a roof line that is approximately 24 feet in height. The roof line as proposed is compliant to the code and complementary to the existing home. Finished floor elevation of the existing home and proposed garage are 0.04 inches, which is about a ½ inch difference, and are compliant and complementary to one another. And the roof pitch of the proposed detached garage and the existing home match. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is in attendance.
I, at this time, would like to ask if the applicant is here and would like to add anything to the site plan discussion for tonight. Please come forward and
Sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying. You all kind of like muted a little bit rather than a higher pitch, but that's fine. My name is Charles Hiltz. I'm at 502 Hibiscus Ave. I've put in a request to have a standalone detached garage on the extra lot next to my house. 2 doors down from me is the exact standing garage, but it has been approved a couple of years ago, so I see no reason why mine shouldn't get approved. Thanks.
I have a question for you.
do you have anything else to add at this point?
No, all the information that was there, I think we meet most of it. As far as the shrubbery going around, I understand I have to plant 40 shrubs around. That's not a problem, we'll do that. If you see, if any of you have been by my current house, I got more shrubs than I know what to do with. So I'm sure we'll have no problem there. The roof on my current house is actually currently being replaced. It's probably about 98% done. With this rain that we've had, it would have been done to convert it to a steel roof, which will match the new standalone garage once it's done.
I did notice that when I was by, there were materials
you did
in
go by, good.
the driveway, and you're right, it's almost done. But we rained yesterday and rained today, so. Okay, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions, either of Mr. Hintz or the staff?
I have a question. I notice a full bathroom proposed with this project. So this isn't just a garage. What's the purpose of a full bathroom as opposed to, say, a half bath? I can understand a half bath with a toilet and a sink.
Right.
Do you intend to rent this property?
Oh, negative.
Well, why would you need a shower?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we might be working on a car out there and get kind of dirty. You might be working on planting those 40 shrubs that I need to do. Instead of dragging it into the house, I could actually take a quick shower out there.
I'm concerned
it's
about
mostly-
future use. I mean, that you could potentially rent that out and subdivide it inside without the city's knowledge.
I was going to say, I don't think the city would let me do that.
Well, we have a lot of that goes on here. We don't go patrolling inside your home.
Yeah, I understand. Well, you can have my word that it won't be rented out. It's more of my doghouse. I'm sure all of you have a doghouse here and there where you can go to when you and the wife have been around to each other too long for the day. And I like to piddle about, and so that's where I'll be. The neighbor, as I mentioned, a couple of doors down, has the exact layout. Actually, I borrowed his plans to go to a contractor to get mine done.
Does he also have a full bathroom in his?
He does.
Okay, I'd like to look back on that. The other question I have is the footprint been calculated with the concrete pad on the property?
For the purpose of...
Footprint of the whole structure, including the pad, has that been taken into account as far as the lot size percentage-wise?
Yes.
That's it for my questions. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mrs. Kaltenberg?
Actually, Mr. Cristino asked my questions. He has stolen them from me. Sorry.
We're all on the same wavelength, and that's good. Mr. Carter?
No questions. think Mr. Christo covered my concerns.
Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. When I went by your house the other day, I did notice the roof was also being put up. There's a lot of trees on that extra piece of property. I know some of them are big pines, which are not a problem, but there was a lot of palm trees on there. Are you going to try to preserve as many of those as you can, or?
Actually, that's a good question. The original design that was drawn up by the engineer, I guess, put the garage all the way to the back. And actually, when you opened up the backside of the garage, you fall into a ditch, for a water ditch back there. So anyways, no, I brought it all the way to the front. It's my original idea, because in the back, I wanted to keep several of the palm trees that are already there.
Okay.
I only want to clear back far enough for the garage, and then probably about 10 foot beyond that for a little patio area on the backside of the garage.
Okay. My other question, and here, John stole my question too about the bathroom, but I had a question on the septic system. Is that bathroom that you're building going to tie into the existing septic there, or are you going to put another septic system in for that bathroom?
No, the existing, it's going to be, what do they call it, pump out, where it has its own holding tank, and then it pumps into the main holding tank.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Simmons?
Well, I've only got one left. And it has to do with item number 5, I think, on the page 4. I'm assuming that where you have 16 foot in height and the proposed home, the proposed home is the actual home, I'm assuming?
The actual home has a 24-foot roof height. The proposed garage has a 19-foot 4 5/16 inch height. It's less than the home, so it's compliant.
No, I'm just saying the proposed home, it's the real home, right? The existing home?
Yeah.
Okay,
In which we live, yes.
okay, that's it.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
What's the age of your existing home?
About 20 years old. It was, say again?
It was 2001.
21 years old, my wife's son. Well, that doesn't tell me the age. I have to
It's
do the math.
19 then.
You wouldn't happen to
19
know
years old.
offhand the gallon capacity of your existing septic tank? Is it a 1,000, 1,200?
I do not.
Just concerned that if there was any future use
Right.
outside of your own there, that you'd be overloading the existing
Understand.
septic system.
Is it
So-
normally calculated on bedrooms rather than
That's correct.
bathrooms?
And once
I'm
again,
not
my
increasing your
concern that,
bedroom.
we've seen all kinds of things here. You have to
Oh, I'm sure you do,
understand,
yeah.
people park campers in their backyard and they rent them out here.
Yeah, no.
And
no
we don't
campers.
catch them. So,
Understand, yeah.
okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions?
I do have one unique question of my own. I am assuming we have a unity of title on both lots?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Well, that's good. That was one of my last questions, was that I thought it recorded that on the site plan. I thought that's what the symbol was. The other question that I have is, unless I missed it, I didn't see, Mr. Loring, on the site plan, an indication of a septic and where it was located. Maybe I didn't look at it close enough to tip me off on that. I was surprised that it was on a septic.
Yeah, it doesn't show on the plan. The applicant would be required to get any kind of overage or a septic permit for the use. But as he had correctly pointed out, it's really based on the number of bedrooms, not necessarily the number of fixtures.
Right. Well, I know we're kind of in the background, we're working toward getting more houses on, on a sewer system so that we, long-term, will help our lagoon and reduce pollution. That basically was the extent of my questions. Thank you for bearing with us, Mr. Hiltz. we'll see if there are any further deliberations with the commissioners. Have any comments?
No.
I would say then that I guess we're in a situation we could entertain a motion. I would just say that we need to consider the 7 points, but actually 3 of them are actually pluses on behalf of the homeowner, who did an excellent job and has been very cooperative, and the design does meet well. But there are a couple of points there that when we make a motion, we may want to consider that. Someone prepared to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the accessory structure at LDC section 54-2-7.5, 502 Hibiscus Avenue for 996 square feet for, excuse me, detached garage, which will include, as an addendum, the 7 points that were brought out by staff.
Mr. Chair, if I can, do we have any public input before we make that final decision? I know there's no one on Zoom and probably no one here, but just for the record.
Thank you. Is there anyone here? I'm sorry, that's my error, because I did not realize that we needed to call for that. Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to offer input on this site plan?
And there's no one on Zoom.
Okay, seeing no one spring to their feet, I guess we can proceed then.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. so we
Excuse
have-
me, who seconded the motion?
Bill Simmons.
Mr. Roth? Oh,
Thank you.
Mr. Simmons.
oh, Mr. Simmons, okay. I had one other question on this, if I may. I
I
don't want
was
to
just gonna
interrupt that.
say, deliberation before we take a vote to make sure we, one, understand the exact motion, and if there are any points of clarification. So, Mr. Christopher, go ahead.
Christino, that's okay.
Christino, I'm sorry.
We're working on it. I'm looking at the driveway layout coming out to Hibiscus here. And it looks like the setback for the proposed building is a little closer to the road than the existing house. Is that correct?
It is not, it's equal.
It is equal. It lines up with
The
what, an
garage.
existing garage?
Yeah, I had to have the plans redrawn because they were 5 inches off.
And one of my other concerns here, it looks like you're putting in, what, a 12-foot garage door for this?
It would be 10-foot high.
10-foot
garage door.
high, so it's a substantial door. Is there any way to offset the driveway coming in there that large garage door isn't just staring at the street? It could be trees planted, offset the driveway and curve in. Is that out of the question there, or?
Not really out of the question. I mean, I'm not sure. I think I understand what you're saying. It's going to look like it goes into
It's a big building,
good-sized
big
thing.
door facing the road.
But I don't know if you saw what I drove up in. I have a big truck. that I
No,
like to do
I have a big truck too. I'm a contractor for years.
Right.
I understand. I'd love to have a 10-foot door
There you go.
in my house, so.
And,
Not that I'm jealous, I'm just wondering how that's gonna appear street size to your neighbors. They're gonna be looking straight down at the garage door.
I think it's going to be looking exactly like my neighbor's 2 doors down.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I wasn't diligent this time. I didn't drive down your neighborhood. I should have.
yeah.
I mean, everything looks good. It looks in place. My concern
Appreciate
is
that.
still the bathroom, being a full bath there.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of like my airport hangar I had up north. I had a full bath in there, but it never used the shower, but it's there. It's a good selling point down the road, you know. I do have a question, what the proposal was that you guys are about ready to vote on. I don't know if I understood.
What the motion?
Could we have the motion read back, which is what we would do before we vote on it anyway? Mr. Loring or Ms. Bosworth?
I'm not sure if Janet had written it down. She is with us now on Zoom, if she can repeat it back. But in summary, it was acceptance, if I believe, acceptance of the approving this garage with Mr. Loring's 7 points in his staff report. But it was actually, the first 4 were more conditions of things that still needed to be done.
Correct.
The last 3 were just, hey, these are in compliance.
So it's really 4 conditions.
Okay.
Just a question for Mr. Loring. Is there any verification of the property that the applicant's speaking of, 2 doors down, that does have a full bathroom in the garage?
I didn't research the neighbor's garage, so
I had a telephone conversation with Mrs. Hilt, and she had mentioned that, and so I had pulled to make sure it had permits and had gone before the board, and it was about 4 years ago.
I was gonna say, I sort of remember that, actually.
Okay.
So I didn't pull the floor plan to see if it had a
Not
bathroom.
that we
but it
don't
was-
believe you, it's just,
Then.
I want to know that staff verified that. We granted that 4 years ago. I see no reason to decline his application today. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Well, just a point, I did notice that other building, and I thought 10 foot was going to be big also, but when you drive by from the street, it's not a glaring difference. It's not, in my mind, a problem.
It looks actually nice. It does.
Now, did you have one other question?
Well, I did. I wasn't sure what we're talking about, 7 points. Or the points that were in the back. Are those the ones that were highlighted with the dot?
Yes.
That's
Okay,
correct.
are you,
Yeah.
as you suggesting, I need to comply with all them?
Well, actually, 3 of them, it's a complement. The last 3 are
Right.
complements. The first 4 are conditions, and one is relative to the roof that it would need to be done, and the materials that you're going to use on the
Same.
garage match both materials and color.
Right.
You would need a revised site plan with the landscaping.
Yeah, I have no problem with the landscape, and I think in that same bullet, though, was the submitting of a plan, a landscaping plan, which I would object to. I don't think you guys are in the business of planning landscaping, really. My requirement is 40 bushes. I'll do you 40 bushes, but I don't see where you need to have a plan.
I don't either. I think the specifications here are sufficient for you,
Right.
giving you a distance between the shrubs and the shrub height.
I don't mean to speak for Mr. Loring, but I know that the intent was is just even a survey that just has some general legend that indicates the 40 shrubs, so that when the inspector that goes out for the final inspection, he's got that in his packet that shows that the shrubs are supposed to be there. So it doesn't have to be a revised plan from Ando Builders or anybody.
I
Just give me
understand that,
something
but I
from a
object to
survey.
that period anyway, so it does, I mean, you know.
It would be
I don't
just a
think we
matter of
need that.
drawing
Some of these
circles
get expensive.
on that drawing where
So-
you're going to plant them, so that when the inspector comes out, he can see that they're there and it's in compliance, that's all.
I understand that, I just didn't want to hold this thing up any longer. I've been playing with it since end of last year to try to get it approved and in, and we're still, COVID-19's come up, and I'd like to get started.
I don't blame you.
That's true. That's true.
If I may here, I mean, it's pretty clear to me, we're supposed to have a shrub every 3 feet, 24 inches in height, 40 shrubs. So someone's calculated the distance around the perimeter of the structure. I don't see a particular need to have a specific landscape plan
Right.
myself.
I don't think we were asking for that.
They're not asking for a
We
plan.
just.
Oh, good. You want them to jot down on
Yeah, they
a
want
piece
it.
of paper where you're gonna put them?
Yeah.
Just take the existing plan and draw circles on it. I think that's what's been done in the past.
the intent was so that the inspector knew to look for landscaping at the
Right.
time of the final approval.
Right. Yep. Okay.
I understand that, but I still object, because when I actually get it done, then I'll decide where I want to put them. I have probably 40 already in the backside of the garage between, what are those trees' names? Eurekas that I put up there, because just behind my lot, they just built 4 new homes, so I went ahead and wanted to block that off. And I have a plan in my mind, and which would take care of easily the 40, because I wanted to put a kind of a excuse me, a hedgerow in between the house and the garage, and between the garage and the next lot, which would give us some privacy in the back area there. And I think that would take care of the 40 for sure.
Well, it'd be just a matter of taking a drawing you have and putting the circles around where you're going to put them, and that's it.
Here-
There's nothing more elaborate than that.
Here's where I differ with you, and I'm with the applicant on this. because once he draws this and submits it, and as the structure is built and finished, and he visualizes a different layout for the shrubs that, in his eye, it's his property, looks more attractive, are we gonna have a problem? Does he have to go back with the inspector, and the inspector goes, well, you drew your shrubs here and here and here? I don't think we need to get into that. I think you're taking away the flexibility of finishing it. I think the 40 shrubs is a substantial number. The spacing, to have him lock it down exactly where those shrubs are gonna go right now is a burden I don't see necessary to put on the applicant at this point. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I believe the code may just call for the ability to put the shrubs and the trees. Doesn't necessarily call that you have to dictate where.
Good. Can I just put my oar in the water a little bit? This is something that we've had numerous requests, growing numbers of requests for large garages, accessory buildings, whatever you want to call them. And there was a time not too long ago where people were putting them up and they were naked on the lot. We had nothing that we could, and that caused a burden on the neighborhood. You wouldn't do that, we know that, because your property is beautiful the way it is right now. But if we ask all other applicants to do an informal plan, even just a note that says, I understand I am to place 40 shrubs, and attach it to the plan, then when the inspector goes out, he says, oh yeah, there's supposed to be 40 plants. Where, you got 40 plants there? Yeah, okay, check it off, it's done. It's not a big deal. We've asked others to do it, I think we need to do it.
Well, I think the requirements, if I may, in there is based on the calculation, which you've done. It says I have 40. The inspector can simply count 40 and be done with it. Where they are has no variance on code.
I have a question. If the applicant draws a plan with the circles on it, roughly where these plants are going to go, and then later on changes his mind when the inspector's out there, all he would have to do would be to show the inspector that he doesn't want to put them here, he wants to move them over there. Wouldn't that be?
He could certainly change it before the time of the final inspection, if he's moving 6 to one side or 10 to the other.
Would he be required to resubmit a plan with drawings, or? Just from building in this town, I know it could be a little difficult with the final inspection, so.
As long as they're foundation plantings, as you can see on page 3 and D, they're called foundation plantings, and they're supposed to go around the building, so whether they're all on one side or how they go, that's just the requirement, is the foundation plantings. There certainly can be, they're not set in stone on the exact location, but they have to be around the building.
They're foundation plantings, and I'll just be quite candid. I mean, I understand it's a burden on you, but why are you different than anybody else that needs to come before us to get approval that we make an exception for you?
Oh, well, I didn't know that was a requirement. I would hope my builder, should that had been a requirement, would have drawn those in for me.
No, we get some very extensive landscaping plans, believe me, they're done by architects.
I mean,
it's usually commercial, but.
Right, so I mean, as long as you guys require every residential person to do that.
We do.
We do.
Then you can require me, but if you're not, then I would recommend you don't.
We're not singling you out.
We don't make, there's no exceptions, everyone does unless you do apply for an exception. So, but anyway, that's enough said from me.
I don't want to be treated any different, for sure.
In other words, what you're being told here is just draw the circles approximately where you think you're going to place your shrubs. And
Foundation planning.
Foundation plan.
Right.
And if you feel the need to adjust down the road, it's not going to be a make or break for your final approval.
I want to say no, because I believe it's my right to be able to put them where I want to. I believe if you want to break open the code and say, all right, is it required that a residential, when they're building a house or a garage or whatever, to submit a plant plan where the plants are gonna go.
Actually, we do, especially if you can
Yes.
see it from the street.
Well,
It is
the requirement is
part of
only
the
for
plan.
garages over 750 square feet.
Right.
So if
It
you-
is.
Yes, for the size.
All right, then if it is in the books, then I'll do
It
it.
is,
I'll be happy to do it. Then, because I don't know why it was a recommendation, no, not a requirement.
No, I think you'll find the plan staff here is very accommodating, and we don't ask for, or they don't ask for things that aren't part of the requirements. Matter of fact, they bend them to be a little bit more lenient, because some landscaping plans are extremely stringent. This is just follows the footprint of a normal plan. You're not being singled out in any way, shape, or form, so I don't think it's in any particular detriment to you to move forward with this. And we have a motion on the floor, and at this point, I think, is there any further discussion? I think we would like to, we've discussed it. Are there any other questions of the commissioners on the motion that's on the floor? Call for their voting.
I just have one where I apologize. I assume you're planning on installing gutters on the structure?
Yes.
And is the runoff going to be directed down the driveway towards the road, or?
No, I'm gonna ditch them I got a ditch right in the back.
Okay, that's it,
It'll
thank
be
you.
underground to the ditch.
Good, okay.
Okay, could we have a roll call then for the vote on the motion? Vote yes is to approve, vote no is to deny.
May I ask a question, please, first? This is Janet.
I'm sorry, who?
Janet.
I'm the recorder.
Okay,
Who is either or both of the alternates going to vote tonight?
yes,
Yes.
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 Oh, okay, I just wanted to be sure. All right, I'll call the roll now. Mr. Hugan,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes,
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Cristino,
Yes.
and Mr. Carter.
Yes.
It's unanimous in favor.
thank you.
Congratulations, good luck on your building.
Congratulations. Took a long time to get to this point, but you're good to go, and we wish you a lot of luck with it, in getting it done. And I might add, the architecture there is very nice, and in the style of your house and the plans that you have for the garage.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
No problem.
okay. There is no other new business.
What?
It would be just a matter of, any commissioners? Any commissioners have any, points to make under commissioners' matters? It's time for you, to speak what's on your mind relative to comments about the meeting or other
No, this
matters.
has nothing to do with the meeting, so I could wait until we have Commissioners' Matters. Is that where we are now?
That's where we're at, yes.
I
I was
guess,
trying to bring that to your attention.
I guess I would direct this at Dory. I just became aware today, a house going up across the street from me. Spoke to the foreman who's been building these right along. And we have a concern in the city as to whether or not we have available rental properties. Well, apparently this investor from Fort Lauderdale has purchased in the area 50 lots in the city of Sebastian, putting up 50 single-family homes. Not one of them is going on the market for sale. Ms. Cottenberg, you're a realtor. These properties could probably be purchased with a mortgage, $1,200, $1,300 a month. These builders are coming in here and they're getting $1,500, $1,600 a month rent. My concern is the degradation of existing neighborhoods throughout the city to be placing rental properties in established neighborhoods. I have nothing against renters. My experience, they don't take care of the properties. The owners of the properties don't maintain them over a period of years. And we have what was once a nice area being overrun by either college students, et cetera, et cetera. We end up with more cars on these properties than we would normally have with a husband, wife, and say one teenager. I've seen it. I have a house down the end of my block that has 4 college kids in it. Okay, everything is strewn around, things are on the lawn constantly as one tenant moves out, et cetera. I'd like this to be a subject of discussion as we bring up the comp plan that's coming up in October.
I'm gonna kind
I'd
of
like to
refer-
discourage that as we're considering an annexation with a lot more rental property on the south side of the city. Are we encouraging the balance of rentals to owners in the city to be altered that drastically?
I'm going to refer to Manny because I think it's a property right thing. It's a single-family home, it meets our codes, garage size.
If it
There's a
were
code
one-
that talks about that you can
yeah.
have up to 4 unrelated people in a house, but I believe it's more of a property right to rent out a house or
If
to
it was,
sell it as a single
if it
family.
was one owner building one house, we're not talking about that. We're talking about developers that have obviously bought up large areas of the city, anticipating a boom. And instead of one house, you're talking 50. Okay, in an area, and I think that's something that we would need to address legally. We may need to make some changes, if it's possible. I'd like you to look into it, Mr. Hernan.
If I get directed by the board, I have no problem.
I'd like to consider it a direction before we do the final comp plan in October. This is an issue I'd like to address and see rectified. I'd like to protect our existing neighborhoods, and we all know what a rental property can do.
John, do you know this for a fact?
Yes,
Do you know,
I can give you the builder's name the next time we get together.
so
The developer's out of Fort Lauderdale.
have you gone to the property records and taken a look at what,
Yeah, there's 4 going up right in my neighborhood. It's all the same developer, and according to the foreman who oversees this, instructed me that, well, I'm on 22 houses already that he's completed, and they're on their way. Until they're done with the properties that are here in Sebastian, they are all intended to be rentals. Not one of them's going on the market for sale.
Dory,
I was
wouldn't
curious,
those,
because they're smaller homes. They're 1,600 square foot. A lot of the homes for sale are going 2,000 square foot or so, you know?
wouldn't those fall under our rental property ordinance that we have?
So the ordinance that we have is for vacation rentals, and in the definition, it's for
Right.
short-term, anything under 3 months. But if it's a
Okay.
12-month lease, then that's a single-family dwelling. just a rental.
Okay, so then we have no control over the actual rental of the,
No, we also had, there was a developer that came in about 15, 20 years ago in the Schuman Drive area that had gotten some particular loans for affordable housing. It wasn't a multifamily, they were single-family homes, they're on scattered lots, and they were required for a certain amount of time to offer those at an affordable rental. But it was a condition of their loan. It might have been a HUD loan or an FCA loan or
This
something.
possibly might be the same person. That's the area of town I live in, off of Schuman, and it seems like I've noticed.
But they weren't required to come into the city to necessarily get approval for building single-family. It wasn't a new subdivision. They were single-family homes. They met the minimum size, the garage. So certainly if some of the rentals are not meeting the other part of the codes with regards to junk and debris and the number of cars,
Yeah,
we certainly
I
can
mean,
use our code enforcement
You can
department.
drive anywhere in the city right now and see many areas that are in neglect. Our code enforcement officers, of which we have 2 to cover the whole city, are worked beyond their capacity to police every carpet that ends up on the front lawn for weeks, and couches, et cetera. Like I said, we've got college students down the street that always seem to be moving in and out. It's degradation of a neighborhood. It's something that concerns me, that if we continue to allow this, and there's no guarantee, it's not like we have this subdivision of affordable homes. These lots are pell-mell throughout the city, They could be in your neighborhood, they could be in Mr. Carter's neighborhood. And it goes up across the street and all of a sudden he's got 4 college kids throwing parties because they just rent and they don't give a hoot what the front of the house looks like. And we've got a city right now, you go down Lance Street, looks like Little Haiti. And it just does, it's a mess. It's a sad sight for the neighbors who have spent a lot of money, put in a lot of effort to fix up their homes, to have people that have tag sale equipment laying in the front yard piling up, and code enforcement guys that don't really have an inability to change things. They can stop and request, but short of the fines, et cetera. And if they're renters, they don't give a hoot.
I think that we're kind of walking on thin ice here.
It's possible.
Really thin ice.
It possibly is thin ice.
And as far as the code, any property that is being uncared for, the grass is not being cut, it's trash in the yards, parked cars all over the place, the owner of the property is the one who gets the fine. And if I were an investor and I built 50 houses in a city, that's a significant amount of investment for me. I would want to make sure that my investment was pretty well protected. And if I certainly wouldn't want to be paying fines all over the place. And you're right, if he can build them and mortgage them for $1,200 a month and rent them for $1,600 a month, that's a pretty good investment.
Sure
and
it
he
is.
would do that. But you know, this is not a college town. It's like there may be an occasional house here and there that has several college kids in it, but you'd have to give me a list. I have not seen that here, and I get around quite a bit.
I could take you on a cruise some afternoon. Show you some areas. On a brighter note, it was nice to see the family heating and air building finally get their signage down.
If I can, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Through the chair, as far as Mr. Cristino, a council member, or Commissioner Cristino, I apologize. I don't mind looking into the issue. I do know that the law is pretty clear. I think what Dory was saying, she's correct. There's a difference between vacational rentals, and if me, Manny and On owns a home and I want to rent it out, there's a certain requirement. You don't have to be blood related, but I think it's up to 3 members can live in that property. I would have to look at the statute. I would get back to Dory and to Lisa and to forward the information next time we have a meeting.
What I'm talking about, to be honest with you, I don't want to drag this out much longer. I'm not after the one individual who's renting out his house. It's when someone can have an impact like this particular builder can, owning 50 properties that are all being developed for rentals only. There's a much greater impact on the city than the one, say if Mr. Roth had a house he wanted to rent out, or I have a house I want to rent out. That's not what I'm talking about.
I don't know of any restrictions
on large developers.
Lenders coming in here, buying 20, 30 distressed properties, fixing them, and then renting them. I think as long as they comply with the law, they'll be fine. Now, I'll be more than happy to look at the issue, I think, which was posed by Commissioner Cristino. I'll work with Dory and with Lisa in getting you an answer.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that. I know Mr. Cristino will too. You mentioned a couple of things you mentioned. One was you mentioned a street where you were concerned about the development was not good or deplorable condition. What's
deplorable? Lance.
Lance?
Lance Street.
Okay.
Go down Lance Street and as
the other question I had was you mentioned early in your discussion about rental property south. Did you have a particular reference?
Oh, what I'm
or?
referring to is the proposed annexation of the Graves Brothers property. And I believe we've come up with that with the potential for low-income or affordable homes down there. And I think we were going to be targeting renters. Am I incorrect? On that Graves Brothers property with the duplexes and proposed density changes?
I don't believe we'd gone into details with any type of plan.
No,
We just looked at
no,
the
but it was-
annexation and land use map.
I just wondered, because I wanted to clarify, I did not personally see anything that had surfaced. There were a lot of rumors about it and some false information spread about that, because there really wasn't anything documented as far as what was going there. There was some rough guidelines on streets and so forth, but beyond that, not. And I just wanted to clarify, because I think that's the sort of thing we don't want to have perpetrated. Any other commissioners have a point to bring up tonight? Mr. Simmons, Mr. Hugan? I don't. Mr. Carter?
Thank you.
Ms. Kaltenberg? No. Okay, now we're at city attorney matters. And we will appreciate your comments on that little investigation.
My pleasure, Mr. Chair. Other than that, I have no comment for the board.
Well, I do have one comment.
Whoop, we'll back
This-
up a second then. Okay.
Just an observation. These meetings are not nearly as exciting as the council meetings.
No, I apologize for
They
that.
don't need to be. We don't want them to be. We work with people all the time. That leaves staff matters, and I believe we're going to have a discussion by our planner, is that correct, on Zoom?
Our director, Ms. Fraser, should be popping in.
I'm in.
Hello there.
Can you hear me from all above?
Yes.
I'm sitting in my office, and let me just welcome you all back. So happy to see all of you, and that you're healthy and happy, and we're all here to get back to work. And thank you, Mr. Carter. You rightfully pointed out that in today's packet, I submitted separately, because if you recall, when we started this whole effort for the comp plan update, that I stated I would submit to you all 2 weeks prior to your having to review, have a meeting regarding those certain elements. At least 2 weeks prior, you would receive the information. So that's what you have tonight. You have in front of you the revised calendar. You will note that the same amount of public involvement meetings will occur as we planned before the COVID-19 pandemic. And you've been assured, and there's a letter from DEO stating that they are taking that into consideration. And even though we aren't going to make our presumed deadline in September, we certainly, there's no fines, there's no anything that will come against us for extending it out as we've had to do, as many cities have had to do. So we're on track again, and we're very excited to get moving. In the last 3 months now, we have been working very diligently on updating all of the plans and the elements. What I want to tell you that what you received back in March is really not current any longer. We have updated all of the elements and added many more changes. So please don't, if you want to keep it, that's fine. But please do not spend time, if you haven't already, in reviewing the elements that we gave you back in March. We will be forwarding you new elements as we go along, and those are provided. Now, on June 18th, you will be reviewing governance, infrastructure, and public school elements. Those are in with you tonight, and we look so forward. Kimberly Horn will be here for that meeting. They will help you walk through those 3 elements and take your comments and provide a PowerPoint presentation. And we're very excited to get going on this. Now, what I have also supplied to you this evening is a letter, several letters from the Department of Economic Opportunity in regard to some current discussions that have been occurring regarding the extension of the Graves Brothers future land use amendment. Now, the annexation is not part of our comp plan update at this time. Until the annexation has been resolved through the courts and through the 164 process with the county, we cannot consider the future land use map. It has not been approved by council, and it can't even be considered by council until the annexation has been resolved. So therefore, we requested administratively an extension on the approval of the future land use map amendment. And those letters are in front of you this evening. I wanted to make sure you, the Planning and Zoning Commission, realized exactly what had occurred, and that you have the documents in front of you, that it has been approved by the Department of Economic Opportunity. The state has said, sure, that's no problem. They're gonna give us the time so that if anyone in the community had any concerns or questions, you, the Planning and Zoning Commission, would have that information at your ready. And if you have any questions regarding what is in front of you this evening, I am here, kind of, in front of you. I'm actually in my office, and able to take any questions at this time.
So the packet that we did have and reviewed, because I did review it, just trash it?
Well, and you know that you would have had a copy of the strike through portion, and that hasn't necessarily changed, even though I'll give you a new one anyway. But I wouldn't say it's completely different, but we did go through it. We've gone through all of these elements several times now, and making sure that we can really be close to what we hear from the community and from what we have gotten guidance from. So it has changed. You may be better served getting rid of the first three. I believe, let me look at the old, the ones that you received back in March would have been the future land use, housing, and schools. So you may want to ditch it for lack of, or recycle it for a better term. And then this evening you have in your packet the new schools version. Any other questions?
I have one for you.
Just a quick
Yes.
one. Is each section prefaced with a number in front of it? As far as, I see 4 infrastructure element, so each one, there's several sections, they're all prefaced by a lead-in page or a cover page?
Correct, yes, sir. So
Okay.
we have 8 elements, we actually have 9 with the economic development element, which we are not reviewing. So you will be, there's a total of 8 elements that we will be reviewing, and you have in front of you this evening, number 4, number 7, and number 8.
Okay, thank you, that's exactly what I wondered.
Okay.
Lisa, I just have a
Okay, go
quick
ahead.
question for you on the residential land use designations on densities. Did we add a
Yeah.
classification here? I'm noticing a low density, moderate density, I don't recall, medium
We aren't
density.
reviewing that right now, Mr. Cristino.
Okay.
And what you have in front of you is not current, so I would not concentrate
Okay.
on the future land use element that you received back in March. It is not current. So we will discuss it when it becomes time that you have the new element in front of you.
Okay.
Right now, the 3 in front of you are infrastructure, government and implementation, and public schools.
All right, very good, thank you.
Anyone else?
So,
Thank you.
tell us, please, what we're to focus then on for the June 18th meeting? Those 3.
That is correct, sir,
Okay.
yes. What you have in front of you will be part of the presentation from Kimley Horn. Those 3 in front of you are the ones that we are going to focus on June 18th.
Okay, great. Yes, sir.
Hi, Lisa, Graham Cox. I must be missing something, but where do I find the new versions in the packet. When I went online to look at what's on the agenda here tonight, I didn't find a new packet of anything.
That's correct, sir, because you are not part of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission receives the information for these elements 2 weeks prior. That is an agreement we had with them to give them enough time to review the elements prior to the presentation at the public meeting. Now, it will be, like everyone else, the public will get it 1 week before as part of the agenda. This is not part of tonight's agenda. This was just supplemental information because we agreed we would give it to them for 2 weeks before instead of 1 week before. So next week, when we issue the agenda for the June 18th meeting, it will be available to the general public electronically.
Thank you.
The calendar was posted on the website and Facebook today. So, and for everyone's information, the city council also receives all of this information 2 weeks prior, just like the Planning and Zoning Commission.
2 weeks prior to what? For the city council, 2 weeks prior to what? The next meeting?
To the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where they will be reviewing those particular elements.
So you said, and the city council will get it 2 weeks prior.
That is correct, sir, yes.
2 weeks prior to which meeting now?
The June 18th meeting for the Planning and Zoning
There's a city council
Commission.
meeting next week. Are they getting stuff 2 weeks prior to that?
No, sir. I think you're a little confused.
No, I'm not confused. I'm asking.
The Planning and Zoning
It
Commission,
won't, sir, it will not be discussed by city council. They're
No.
getting the information. And like we're going to review it, and then you have the opportunity to come back on June 18th, because you can get that 1 week prior to our June 18th meeting.
I get 1 week and you guys get 2 weeks.
that's correct.
It's a preferential treatment for the Plan Commission,
sure
I guess
is.
you could call it that. We're volunteers.
This is not public involvement.
It's a lot
in
of
the best sense the word,
information.
is it?
It's a lot of information for us to go over, I know for you to go over as well. We have to be prepared to review every little nut and bolt of it. And we asked for
And
it.
you think the public doesn't want to do that?
I can understand that.
It's somewhat frustrating that, we still get a week to look at something. You guys get 2 weeks to look at something. City council gets 2 weeks to look at something.
Well, Mr. Cox, if you would like a copy, I would be happy to make a copy for you. I will let you know tomorrow how much that will cost to make an exception and give you a separate copy.
We talked about a digital copy, did we not, when I emailed
Well,
you?
then we send out the digital copy with the agenda 1 week prior to the meetings. That is standard operating procedure.
What's that, John? Yeah, public participation be damned, huh? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other staff matters?
None for the table here.
Fantastic. In
Thank
that
you all
case,
so very much. Have a lovely, lovely evening. Sorry, Mr. Roth.
we are adjourned.
Thank you, Lisa.